like AI did, right?
Yeah.
On occasion.
And again, that's the next suit.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here. A little disclaimer that I like to do at the beginning of every presentation is that I personally do use AI in my work. So this presentation was created with tools like Claude AI, which is a large language model generative AI. And we also use an assistive AI you might be familiar with called PowerPoint design tools. So just like to make sure you all know about that. All right. So by the end of today's session, our goal is that you are going to understand how to utilize library resources like course reserves or any of our electronic resource and integrate them into Brightspace. We're also going to talk about open educational resources or OER, and these are all intended to, again, provide timely and cost-free access to course materials for our students. All right. We also want to make sure that you are prepared for your next step. So we're going to be working with you to design a strategy that's specific to your course that can incorporate at least one of the methods we're talking about today. All right. So at this point, some of you have probably heard me speak about either OER or open educational resources, or library resources like course reserves. It all speaks to the cost of students for them to attend college. And when we're talking about barriers and accessibility, the cost of course materials can really have an impact on our students. This survey that I'm showing you, the results that I'm showing you on the screen right now, was a 2018 survey for Florida students, or students attending school in Florida. This was before the pandemic, and almost 65% reported not being able to financially afford the required textbook for a course. All right. 43% of them then, as a result of that, took fewer courses. They actually dropped out of programs because they couldn't afford the materials for courses throughout a program. Some of them tried to take the course anyway and ended up getting a poor grade, or they dropped the course, they withdrew, or actually failed it. All right. So we know that the cost of course materials is going to have an impact on our students, especially when we talk about retention. All right. Here at SUNY Cobleskill, we ask students to budget $1,200 every academic year for their course materials. This is $200 above the national average of $1,000. For this to be recognized as a low cost course material, students should only be paying $25 or less on their course materials. All right, so that's actually the standard that is set by the state of New York for it to be considered affordable. All right. And I'm going to plant a seed here. And that's that there are programs that exist at campuses throughout the country, including in state systems like the University of California, that have what are called ZTC programs, that zero textbook costs. All right. That means that entire programs are working together to review their course materials so that students, once they pay their tuition, there's not additional costs for lab materials, textbooks, softwares for homework. It's all included in the price of their tuition. And I think we can do that at Cobleskill. All right, so next. So I'm going to be talking, there's going to be some terminology that we're going to be talking about, and I want to kind of clarify because, again, I recognize we're not all librarians. So when we talk about library access, we're talking about resources that are paid for by tuition or the campus and the state budgets. To place this in context, 81% of the library collections are electronic, meaning that only 19% of our collection are what you actually see when you walk into the library. So that includes books, the physical journals, newspapers, DVDs. That only represents 19% of our collection. So the other 81% have very complex permissions and subscriptions. That includes the databases, the journals, the articles that our students, when they're registered, can access without paywalls. All right. So that stuff we want to really kind of emphasize that nothing we're talking about really is free. All right. It might be free to students, but there actually is a substantial monetary value behind library resources. As opposed to free resources, which are often found on the internet when students start Googling things. And this is, a lot of times you'll find websites that are going to say, oh, free resources. And that means that you can access them, but you can't really share them, right? They're not intended to be shared. You also might be, when you click into a website that has free resources, clicking something that says you have access to my data and browsing permissions. So if you're not entering actual money into it, you might be paying with your data, and that's something to really think about. And then OER, and again, open educational resources, which is my specialty, because of the open licensing involved with these materials, meaning that they have, in addition to copyright, usually it's a Creative Commons license or lives within the public domain. That means not only can we access that for free, we also have the ability to modify them, meaning we can localize content, we can translate it, we can encourage students to update materials as part of their assignments. So this is, again, very basic overview, and I'm always happy to talk licensing if people are curious, but for time today, I want to make sure we kind of just understand the three differences. All right, so we are going to share with you a course strategy handout. All right, Faye is going to go ahead and put that up on the in the chat. We're going to drop a link to on OneDrive, okay? So you are not going to be able to edit the handout that we're linking. So we need you to download it or make a copy so that you can actually edit it. All right. I encourage you to open up the link now. If someone can kind of just confirm to me that they're able to download it, we can see a thumbs up or something, that would be really helpful because I want to make sure that we're able to actually access that.
It's spinning, Teresa. It's not downloading. It's just spinning.
Of course it is. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. We're going to do that.
You did get a thumbs up. Somebody else, it worked for Mary. It's just not working for me.
Okay, excellent. Bear with me here.
But I'm in Warner, so maybe it's a.
Well, I mean, we've had really fun errors with everything OneDrive.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it.
Okay, wonderful. So also on my screen, you should be able to see what it looks like, okay? So I would like everyone to take a few minutes and think about what classes you're going to be teaching in the fall, okay? Go ahead and fill this out. It's for you. You're not submitting this to us. This is for you to help plan and kind of evaluate your courses, all right? So go ahead and put in that course name and number, semester and year you're teaching. So if it's in the fall semester, that's great. If not, and it's next spring, that's fine too. Again, just for kind of record keeping. Go ahead and write down the materials, including the textbooks that you're using, all right? And do a quick Google search and see how much a copy of that costs, all right? If you're already using course materials that are not, they're not traditional textbooks, that's awesome, kudos. If you're doing that though, I really want you to take time to do this, all right? And I'm not going to call anybody out for how much stuff costs, okay? Because again, I understand this is kind of a new idea, all right? But once you have the idea of the current textbook and the cost per student, I want you to do some math and think about how many students are enrolled in that class, all right? So for example, do you have 25 students who are then responsible for buying a $200 textbook? All right, if you want to do the math there and multiply the cost by the number of students, that's the potential financial impact you have per semester for your class, that one class. All right, so when we talk about return on investment, the savings that we can have for our students are astronomical. All right. So a couple things about the course reserves handout, or the course strategy handout. because I'm not going to show you it the whole time. All right. Every resource that we're talking about today, every link is in that handout. Okay. So when we talk about course reserves policy or submitting a request, that's all linked in there. So again, make sure you download a copy of it, share it with your colleagues. And then you're going to be kind of filling it out. It's going to help you figure out what works for you in those next steps. Okay. Let me go back now to slide deck. All right. And I'm going to now pass it off to Faye so she could talk to you about course reserves. Faye, just a heads up, you are muted.
Thank you, Theresa. Hello, everybody. I'm Faye. I'm going to share my slide. Everyone can see that? Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things today, one of them being course reserves. I'm going to start out by explaining what they are. So basically, they are materials that are set aside for a specific class. And they're typically like required textbooks or required readings, but they don't have to be. They can be other items. They are for short-term borrowing inside the library. So we have them set currently at 3 hours borrowing time for inside library use. They can be extended beyond that time if the student wishes. So course reserve impact, it has great impact among our students. Basically, what it does is it helps eliminate early barriers with financial constraints or even shipping delays if they have ordered their books. And when they don't have the access to those books when their classes begin, it really sets them behind. So by moving your materials to being also in course reserves as another access point allows the students who might be experiencing some shipping delays or really feeling the financial pinch and really unsure if they can purchase these materials, it gives them access from the first day that they're here. So while they're either waiting for their books or they just can't afford them, they can come into the library and still have access to those materials. And it helps with their overall engagement and obviously course performance as well. During the last academic year, we had 944 course reserves checkouts. That is a substantial number, and it tells us that they're being used and they're really needed. So placing on course reserves, we try to make it as easy as we possibly can. We have two options. Your first one is to lend us a copy. You retain it as your own property, but you're just letting us borrow it. So if you have an extra copy or a publisher's copy or whatever it might be, you're lending it to us. And then you can drop it off at the library. And what we do is we process it for course reserves. It's then stored behind the circulation desk. So the students do have to come up to the desk to check it out. And then once the term that you have decided to put it on course reserves is over, then it will be returned safely to you. Our second option is to request a purchase. You can reach out to any one of us, either your library liaison or anyone in the library really, and we'll help you discuss with you options on how we can obtain something for course reserves. But please keep in mind that we do have really limited budgeting, and sometimes there are some publisher digital licensing that we have to work through for electronic things. If you do decide that you want to put an item on course reserves, we do have a course reserves form. It is also in the handout that Theresa was just talking about, and it's also available on our website. So this is the form, what it looks like. You fill out your information and the course information. This past year, we've added this indefinite option because before you'd have to put it on and put it off, put it on, put it off. But if you're teaching the same course or you want the students to have access to the same material through the entire year indefinitely, then you can check that box. and it will remain on course reserves until you tell us that you want it off course reserves, and then we can get it back to you. This form can also be used for up to 4 items, so you don't need the same sheet multiple times. You can select, and then you have the option of adding your items, your second item, how many items, and then how many copies you want on course reserve. Sometimes we do have multiple copies of textbooks because it's really highly used, or there's multiple copies of like a reading or something, so that can be used in different times. Once you submit it, it's going to go to the circulation team. They're going to process it once they receive the item, but they have all the information. If you want to drop off your book and you forgot to do this, no problem. We have copies at the desk that we can have you fill out just in real time when you're dropping it off as well. And if you have questions about what it is that you can and cannot put on course reserves, we do have a course reserve policy that walks you through things that are allowable on course reserves and then things that we do have some limitations from. However, we'll work with you to make it happen as best as we can. I also want to point out that it's not just limited to books or readings, things like that. We all have other things in the library that are also utilized for course reserves. Last semester, we had like a model skeleton that came in where students can check it out and do their work. A couple semesters ago, we had a model heart with the same concept. So that model is on reserve behind a circulation desk, and they can check it out to do their coursework as well. So we really can expand what we think of as a traditional course reserves to help accommodate your needs. Okay.
Hey, Faye, thanks so much for that.
Yeah.
We have one quick question, and
Yes.
Neil Law is asking if we can cover more than one section or include multiple faculty on one form. So I'm thinking from a programmatic approach, if we could do that.
So we could likely do that. So I'm guessing it's the same textbook for multiple classes. Is that what I understand?
Neil, can you confirm that? Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's okay. Because what happens, you can put that in like the comments section underneath that form. Because what happens is we tag that book for a specific course, but we can put multiple tags on the book for the course. So that way, when the student comes up, we can still identify which course and which textbook they're looking for.
Thank you.
Very welcome. The other topic that I wanted to briefly discuss was embedding materials in Brightspace. There are 3 main reasons why I really encourage this to occur. One is our proxy. By doing it, you can eliminate some extra logins. So by being already logged into Brightspace, you're already logged in to our campus, and that once you click on the link into our catalog, it goes right straight through our proxy, and you don't have to log in again to access the library materials. So that cuts down on the number of logins that you have to do. The other is the permanent link is more stable within our catalog. So each item in our catalog has its own URL. It's not the URL at the top of the page. It's within the record for each individual item. And we call that a permalink. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you exactly where to find that permalink to use for Brightspace. But by using this, the link is stable. You don't have those broken pathways, and it'll remain stable across different operating systems, your laptop, and even your mobile devices. And then lastly, you have more control over like the version of the digital content or even the book edition that you want students to look after. And also, it also helps protect against paywalls. So basically, you're making it easy to find. Everything's located in one location in Brightspace. So when you are clicking on that link, you're going through our proxy, you're going to the exact content that you want the students to have. Oftentimes, students will look at for an article title or a book, and they'll just put it into Google, surf the open web. Sometimes they're not finding the correct article, could be similar with similar wording, but not detailed enough to check some of the other parameters. Or they're finding an older book edition, so they're not quite using the materials that you want them to use. Additionally, even if they do find the correct article, they're clicking on it and they're hit with a paywall saying, you want to read this article, I need $60. No one's going to pay $60 for the article. So they're just not going to read the article. They're not going to do it. But by using the link, the permalink in our catalog, it ensures that they're going to the exact resource that you want them to have. It's making it easier for them to find, and it's also preventing them from hitting any paywalls. And I'm just going to give you a little example. I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. Yay. So this is our library webpage. And earlier when I mentioned that the reserve form is located here, you can also find it here. But to find the permalink, I'm just going to type a really broad term to pull up multiple different items. So just searching animal science, there comes up with journals, there comes up with physical books, there's coming up with ebooks, there's coming up with articles. So whatever it is that you find in the catalog that you would like your students to have access to, you can click on the link and it comes, or their title, and it comes to the record. So this is what we're calling the catalog record that you see from the user side. You don't want to use the URL up top. That is not associated with the record. That's more of your searching. So it's not permanent. It goes away. But this permalink right here is the link you want. This link is specifically identified with this article. So if you use a permalink in your Brightspace and then click on it, it's going to come directly to this record that you see here. And then from there, they can click on whichever database that the article or resource is in and then open it. And because they're already logged into Brightspace, it's going to push it through our proxy, and it's going to go right to the resource, and they won't have to log in. It's the same concept with other materials for journals as well. Now, if you can also find the permalink by clicking on this little link here. But again, once you use that link in Brightspace, it will open up to the actual title. So then you'll be able to see what collection it is in, and then you can open it directly into there. So for journals and ebooks, regular books, I also want to just point out that if you decide to put your course material on reserves, we have a reserve section, so it'll go under reserves in the catalog. And so if this book was a course reserves, instead of identifying where it is in the stacks, it'll actually say course reserves here. So if they click on that link, it'll go to this record and it'll show the student that they're on course reserves, that they can come to the library to get the book. So even if it's not, you only access it physically, but it does identify in the system that that textbook is on course reserves. And this is true for any material that we have in our catalog. So even if there's a video that you want them to watch, it's the same concept. It has its own permalink that is only identified to that specific resource. So again, anything in our catalog has its own link. Using that gets them directly to that resource in the catalog. And that was kind of what I wanted to talk about. I didn't have chat up, so I'm not sure if there's any questions, or I can take questions at the end as well.
Yes,
But what I
there's
can
no more
do-
questions in chat.
Perfect. I'll stop sharing and hand it over to Theresa.
Oh, so actually there is a quick question. And so
Oh, yeah.
Carol Morris is asking, does giving them the link to an article satisfy the accessibility aspect?
It's a great question. So if you click the link to the article or you include the link and then they link it to our catalog and then they open it in our databases are accessible. So all those tools that they need, like if there's like they need a reader or whatever, they're built into the database so that they can navigate that right inside the database where the article is.
All right.
That's cool because the reason I was asking is I have a bunch of materials on my Brightspace pages that are articles that I physically scanned
Right.
because they're the seminal work in a particular field. And those would all have to be like translated through whatever accessibility thing we're using, their PDFs. If I can now go back to the articles, find the link and just put that on Brightspace, that just saved a whole lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to send me your articles, I can search our catalog and find them, and I can then send you the direct permalinks if you'd like.
That's very kind of you, Faye, but you're going to get inundated if you offer
That's okay.
that option.
That's okay. I don't mind at all.
Is it, just a follow-up question, and I'm sorry for taking too much time, but what if the article isn't accessible through the databases that we have licenses with?
So currently our databases are all accessible. We have all the databases that we currently have met the current accessibility standards.
I understand that, but so what, let's say there's an article, I'm going away from the accessibility piece for the moment and
okay.
just saying, if I have an article that I want them to read that they can't access through the databases that we have
Okay.
access to, is there any other options, or am I back to having to
Nope.
translate
So
them?
you can work with Kate and do an ILL where she can get an accessible version of that article.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. All right. And again, we do expect there to be a lot of questions, especially with accessibility stuff. So we can talk about more at the end, or schedule consultations. We're always happy to talk. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. All right. Let me make sure. So can you see my screen now? You should say what our OER. Faye, can you not? Right, wonderful.
Yep.
All right, so OER, Open Educational Resources. You'll see this is where I really come alive, and I'm going to have to keep an eye on the clock so I don't just ramble. So OER are any teaching and learning materials that are free to use, but also have that open license applied so that users can also revise, remix, and share the resources. All right. In this context, I do speak about OER mostly as a direct replacement for traditional textbooks. All right. But I really want to emphasize that it could mean something else. It could mean videos, podcasts, because this slide deck itself has an open license applied. It could be considered an OER. So I am using an OER to teach this workshop. All right. It can get kind of hard to wrap your head around. And again, if anyone ever wants to talk about it, I'm happy to get into the licensing. I know a lot of times what I think people don't understand is that open licensing is built on top of copyright. So when you see that all rights reserved statement, right? What that basically is saying is that you have permission to access it, but if you want to actually share it or to adapt it in any way, you need to get explicit permission from the copyright holder to do so. All right. Whereas when we use an open license, it's basically created with the intention that it will be shared. So that what we're doing is kind of removing that layer where you have to double check with the creator. And again, open licensing can get really kind of complex, but there's different rules for different licensing. And again, I'm not going to get into that today. Always happy to talk about it. All right. One of the things that I'm going to talk about are, where to find OER and some examples. But first, I'm going to talk about kind of really why these are the gold standard, in my opinion, for faculty. All right. So in addition to something like course reserves, where students can have access to resources the first day of class, which is huge. Anyone who's taught a class understands that. We also have the ability to tailor content and to localize it for our actual students. All right. The example that I kind of use usually is that if we have an economics textbook actually, no, I'm going to use a really live example. And I'm not sure if Elise Weiss is here, and I don't mean to call her out, but she found a really excellent OER for early childhood, right? But it was produced by the state of Wisconsin, faculty in Wisconsin. So all of the licensing for early childhood educators are specific to students who are studying in Wisconsin. All right. And we looked really hard to see if we could find something that is the same material, but tailored for our students here in New York that covers New York. So that doesn't necessarily exist yet, but it's an opportunity for us to do that if we ever wanted to. All right. Another benefit to using OER is that we can update the content. All right. Anyone who's used a traditional textbook and had versions that get updated every year, right? You're essentially asking students to buy those new textbooks. So it kind of breaks the entire textbook model. Another thing I'll talk about is how, when we talk about investing in physical textbooks here in the library for course reserves, if we put in $3,000 to buy all of the physical textbooks that teachers are using, next year, we're probably going to have to spend another $2,000 at least just to update the textbooks. All right. So with OER, because it's mostly online, you are able to update that content. So if there's huge things that are happening and you need to pivot, you can actually update that material and you have the ability to do so. It also supports innovative teaching practices. Another one of my specialties is it's called open pedagogy. And basically that's allowing students to engage with materials and actually create scholarship as students. All right, so that might be having students do the research and finding out what all the licensing requirements are in the state of New York and compiling them and actually creating a chapter to put into that OER, that early childhood OER. All right, so we could design the assignments instead of putting all of the effort on that faculty member who would then have to do all those updates. All right. It could also include having students create podcasts or videos that are openly licensed and then can be shared to other students studying in that field. Updating Wikipedia pages, having a hackathon, and making sure that we're actually creating pages. That's all examples of what we can do with open pedagogy when we're using OER. And the final bullet point there is how it increases student engagement with materials. All right. And I will say that my experience with students who are being asked to read traditional chapters or articles are not doing it. Of course, there's rare exceptions, but one of the really wonderful things about some of the examples I'm going to show you is that you have assessment practices built into these chapters. So in the middle of a chapter or after a chunk of text, students can actually, be prompted to answer a couple questions. All right. And it's all set up now. So you can embed these right in Brightspace. So you can actually get scores from these open textbooks into Brightspace. So you can actually track their usage right in your course shell. All right. So that's another major benefit of using some of these resources. Really quick, I want to make sure I'm aware of the time. So these are a couple examples, and we're going to drop these links in the chat so you can explore a little bit. But the OER that these are all that I'm sharing are all published in a program called Pressbooks. All right. And so these is a software and a resource that we have available through the OER system. So we don't actually have to incur a cost here on this campus for using this. I'm going to kind of breeze through the examples for time's sake, but the AI in Action, the guide that was released by SUNY on optimizing AI in higher education, this is a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Open License. So this is an OER. Technical modeling, excuse me, technical modeling guides. This is actually created by students. All right, this is over at SUNY Fredonia. So this is happening right within the SUNY system. All right. This is another example coming out of, I think it was Iowa. Of course, I don't see it right away. But again, this is kind of getting up into that more advanced study that would apply to our culture, to our campus culture here. There's more examples of things that you can use. All right. So here on the slide and also in the handout, I've listed some resources. These are different repositories where you have different OER where you can find. I'm going to be very straight up with you. What I have found so far when I'm working with faculty here at SUNY Cobleskill to find OER, it's fairly easy for us to find materials for 100 level courses or 200 level courses, kind of that very general introduction. All right. So once you get into that higher level coursework, it is a challenge to find it. So I don't want to kind of create a false illusion that you're going to be immediately able to find something that matches with your class right away. But what that does is it provides an opportunity for us to either create or adapt existing materials so we can localize them or, select specific chapters and piece together something. And again, my goal when I would talk about OER is not just to give you all something else to do. My goal is always to make sure that you have the professional development and the funding to provide for these type of projects. So it's not something I expect you to plan out this summer for implementation in the fall, unless you do happen to find something that is an easy lift. All right. So if you are teaching psychology 100, right? We probably have applicable psychology textbooks that you can find and use. But if you're doing something more advanced, and I'm totally blanking on what a higher level psychology class would be. But we might have to do some digging or some piece together, or work with you to find something that will really help for your class. Let's see. So one of the questions that I get from faculty a lot are, how do you know what's good? Because there is absolutely, if something can be freely available online and people have the right to edit it, how do we keep track of what's accurate? How do we keep track of the quality? All right. And I will say that we work really hard as practitioners to make sure that we're applying similar reviews. There are peer review processes in place for many of the general creation or adaptation for these projects. But I do want to emphasize that it is up to you as a faculty member, as the teacher, to actually be able to go through and review an OER and make sure that it is appropriate for you to use in your class. All right. The OER world has been, we've been early adopters of universal design from way before when it was a trending term and a mandate. So most of the resources you're going to find are going to be fully accessible, meaning they're going to have the correct headings, they're going to have the captions in the videos. They're also going to have closed captions, alt text for images, right? But it is up to you to kind of go through and making sure you're looking at the content, making sure that it's accurate, free from errors, and that it is something that's going to work with your students. All right. Now, the OER guide, which if Faye has not already dropped that in the chat, I'm going to ask that you do so. Not only does this have, the major repositories that you can find OER, but we also have several rubrics and guides that are available that kind of walk through the steps of what you should be looking for when you're looking at an OER. All right. I understand it can be really overwhelming, but I really just want to make sure that you all understand that these resources are available for you. Okay. All right. So what's next, right? We just kind of put a lot of information at you very quickly. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to take the time to really complete that course strategy handout. All right. That's going to give you a good idea of whether or not you want to, take an existing item and put it on course reserve, which is the single-handed easiest lift that you can do between now and the fall semester. Or if you want to, really look into OER, all right. Talk to your departments at the next time you actually talk to each other. All right. The highest impact approach that we can take on both retention and financial savings for our students is going to be a collaborative and programmatic approach throughout the entire program and across campus. All right. I actually just learned this recently. So this is an example, and bear with me because I'm an AI nerd. OpenAI recently solved a 80-year-old math problem. All right. And the reason they were able to do that is because the data set that was used is totally interdisciplinary. Okay, meaning that we really need to, as humans, be intentional about breaking down the silos that we naturally exist in and working together. All right. So it might be something we consider for our English program to help serve as editors for other programs, right? It might there's a lot of options. And I really just want to emphasize that, but we need to kind of get talking about this as an entire campus. All right. Another thing that I would really encourage you to look into is that I'm working with Lumen Learning through SUNY PD, the professional development program. Lumen Learning has a circle that they've reserved specifically for SUNY Cobleskill faculty that I'll be taking with you. All right. And it's totally free to faculty. It doesn't begin until September 30th and it lasts 9 weeks. And it's basically a way for us to work together to learn more about OER and how to do that open pedagogy piece. So when we talk about designing assignments, right? That's a way for us to learn more about that. Again, it's not something I expect people to pick up overnight. It's a very new idea, but it also is a really great point for us to move forward as a campus when we talk about retention strategies. Right. And Faye, if you didn't already drop that link in the chat, go ahead. I encourage you, sign up for that, talk to your colleagues, sign up for that. Again, I wanted to be the one teaching it, but that's not the way the program works. So our plan is for me to participate right along with you and to be a resource for that. And that's that. All right, so we as librarians obviously wanted to make sure that you have full access to the references that we pulled for information. So that is available to you, especially for the data. I want to make sure that you, when I'm talking about studies and stuff, that you can access that. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop recording.